I'm going to start with a question. Do you see what I see? If we're the same age, and I'm not going to tell you what that is, if you're also a woman, if we speak the same language, and if we come from the same culture, then we might, is the answer. I believe that the generation gap is real, and I have a theory as to why. If you have a body aging in a linear fashion, you have a beginning and you have an end. And what do you get in the middle? A gap. However, the needs of the body and the needs of society and human beings are actually circular. And I think what we need to do is address the gap. My training is as an interior designer, and so I'm going to look at just one example, and that's color. But there are many examples of our needs being circular. All ages don't behave the same way. So one 4-year-old is not the same as another 4-year-old, and a 70-year-old isn't the same as another 70-year-old. So I'm going to use as a sort of framework Shakespeare's 7 Ages of Man, which goes from birth right through to extreme old age and falling off the page, basically. Starting with an infant, your eyes, the photoreceptors in your eyes don't fully develop until you're 4 years of age. What that means is, as an infant, you are only responsive to very strong contrasts, black and white, and very, very strong colors. And I think this has become quite well known, maybe in the past decade only, but prior to that, lots and lots of people had all of these pastel, as we say in the States, or pastel, as we say in Britain, rooms that they'd put children in and dress them in. This was not stimulating for the children and doesn't help their development. And actually what happens with children is the brains are wiring to the point where when you are a baby up until, say, around the age of 4, reactions to color take place in the right hemisphere of the brain. After that age, they've rewired over to the left side. The next stage for Shakespeare is the schoolboy. Around the age of 4, again, this isn't set in stone, we've developed about 250,000 cone cells, and these are the green, the red, and the blue that you used to see on the dots on televisions. And presumably now, we're getting to the place where we are seeing things the same way. No. What we start to see is a development of preferences that are different by gender. University of Newcastle has done a lot of research here in Britain that shows that girls have a preference for pink shades at a very young age. And this doesn't just mean the color pink. This means purples and things that can either go towards the bluer end of the spectrum or the pinker end of the spectrum. The girls will prefer those. The boys will prefer blues that have greens in them and colder shades, and the girls, again, are preferring some of the warmer tones. One little aside about pink, it's kind of a fun color. That is my version of something called drink tank or drunk tank pink. And in the States, they put violent prisoners in cells and surroundings that are actually that color because it lowers the flow of blood and actually the aggression, to the point where there are sports teams that have rules. They've had to make rules where you can't paint your opponent's locker rooms in that color because it was felt they weren't having a fair shot at it. Now, welcoming colors for children are thought to be statistically oranges and yellows and greens, and calming colors, blues and greens. So what's the common denominator? Green. And how often have you seen a green school? Don't know why. The next stage is the lover, which is a bit concerning for parents that you go right from the schoolboy to the lover, nonetheless. Here, there are further differences in gender, and it relates to the amount of words that we use. Statistically, Again, this is a vast generalization, but women use more words to describe color than men do. And within your own life, you may have examples of, honey, can you get that thing for me at the store? And I want the one in the teal box. And his reaction is, sorry, what are you talking about? So this isn't known why, but it's just what we tend to do. Now, the color of love for the lover is red. I think everybody pretty much knows that. And it increases all the appetites, including eating, etc. The least romantic are felt to be this sort of purpley blue color and this orangey yellow. And I think you'll find you've never seen a honeymoon suite decorated in those colors, and it's pretty much not sexy, is it? The next age is the soldier. That's the fourth age, and I think this is about tribalism. Soldiering tends to be olive drab or the colors of the desert or blending in. But when we join a tribe, we put up a standard, we put up a flag. And pretty much the world over, I think you'll agree, it tends to be those strong primary colors. It says, I'm courageous, this is a banner. There are a couple of anomalies, say, in Africa, where they have sort of soft pastel blues, but that's more of their relationship to the ocean that they're trying to focus on. But overall, those tend to be the colors. Where else do we see those colors on a regular basis in a tribal setting? Sports teams. Think of your favorite sports team. I will be terribly surprised if their color's not represented there. Okay, the next stage is the fifth stage. That's the justice, is what Shakespeare calls this. This is the fully mature adult. And I'm going to use this as a way of approaching the workplace. Most of us, at some point in our adult lives, are in a workplace. Sometimes it's at home. It may be out in an office. And these colors, the cyan and white and bright yellow, are felt to be the most efficient colors to work in or to work around. And I think you'll agree, they're not entirely dissimilar to the sorts of tones that were least romantic. So you can increase efficiency and end office romance if you surround yourself by those slightly aggressive colors. So far, we've been born, we've gone to school, we've fallen in love, we've become part of a tribe, interrelating with the society we're working in. We've worked, and now we're entering Shakespeare's sixth age, which is the grandfather, the wise grandfather, also sometimes called the pantaloon. It's just a really fun word to say. Now, older people see just the same way that we do, don't they? Except, I remember my grandfather had those glasses that used to look like the ends of bottles, only they weren't green. So the assumption is they see the same way as we do, but they need bigger lenses to do it with, and then you get those huge eyes. That's not true. And if you're getting to that point in the discussion, then we're moving things forward here. There are two physiological things that happen on the timeline of aging when you get older. One of which is that the lens in your eye actually yellows. You don't notice it happening, and you can't tell by looking at somebody, but that affects the color that you see. So anything that's white actually starts to take on a yellowy tone. Anything that's green starts to look brown. So you can see where this is going. The other thing that happens is those cone cells I was talking about at the beginning, the blue cone cell in particular starts to disintegrate. The effect of which is that anything that's blue, anything that's a medium color blue, starts to look darker. If you want an older person to see something navy, you might need to use something more towards a medium end of the color spectrum. If you want them to see a light blue, you have to go terribly light because they will see it as a darker color. In fact, by the time we're in our 60s, this is terrifying, we see 1/3 of the amount of light goes into our photoreceptors that we had when we were 20. By the time we're in our 70s, that goes down to 20%. We do not see the same way. Now, by the time people are generally in the age of around 70, the favorite colors that we have tend to predominantly, I think this is very interesting, they tend to be white, which you can't see, and blue, which you can't really see. And probably that's why it's the favorite color. You're sort of desperate to see them in the way you used to. There's another thing that I think you will have noticed. You know how when people get older, they start to do this kind of double stepping thing? There could be clinical reasons for this. But we take for granted shadows. We don't sit and think, oh, there's a slight shadow there, there might be a change in level. Because those shadows fall within the blue spectrum, older people lose the ability to see them. And yet, we build our buildings with all sorts of trip hazards and thresholds. Now, I don't know about your own experience. In mine, I have yet to meet a human being who doesn't age. Why are we building into our society things that are going to make people feel uncomfortable when the evidence is there to support other approaches? Why should we have to move house just because we get older? Doesn't make sense to me. The last stage of all, I'm going to relate to dementia environments. Shakespeare calls this the final scene. Unfortunately, it's all too prevalent in our society, and there is a lot of research being done on it, some of which has to do with design of environments. This is an example, I think, of good practice. You see the lights up in the corner. There are a lot of them. There are no shadows in this scene. They've all been leveled out so that there's a feeling of safety and comfort. You see the hallway through those glass doors. The color of the floor is the same inside the room as it is in the corridor. With dementia care, you will get people standing at the edge of a light-colored room, looking into a dark one and not moving forward. To them, that's an abyss. What else do you notice about that? Bright colors, high contrast. It's about making the wiring of the brain maintain itself. Does it remind you of anything else? We have literally gone full circle. The body ages in a linear fashion. The needs of human beings are circular. There are other examples besides colors. There's issues having to do with eating. There are safety issues. There's issues of access. And when we can build a society in which we take the needs in a circular fashion into account, everyone will have a much smaller gap to climb or to bridge. Thank you.